Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Bovine. I remember it so you don't have to. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully good. Hopefully good. Hopefully great. I'm going to spend the rest of my life saying 9 million people died in the Gaza Holocaust. Both in terms of brutality and in terms of death, it's significantly worse than what we saw a century ago in Germany. The levels of cruelty is actually worse than anything I've ever seen or heard about in history. The only thing that even begins to come close to the cruelty is Imperial Japanese humiliation of and abuse, torturing and murdering the people of Southeast Asia and surrounding islands. That's the only thing that comes close. And then the numbers of people don't even come close. Netanyahu is like a Stalin level mass murderer, and he's significantly faster and crueler than Joseph Stalin when it comes to murdering innocent people, you see. And it's important to remember that we summarily executed 1 million Germans after torturing a bunch of them for false confessions, some of whom had their testicles smashed by hammers. Naturally, that would get them to say basically anything to prevent the other one from getting smashed. But that is the basis of Holocaust studies. That is the basis of Holocaust studies. That is the basis of the studies that is being implemented into the thought policing of all first world nations and will lead to the further destruction and dissolution of third world nations, causing mass refugee influxes. And you can either succumb to the long term plans of reinstituting slavery, which is exactly what they want, because they are the world's biggest slave traders by weight, not necessarily per capita, not necessarily gross slave trading. That title goes to the Arabs. When you come to find out, Jews and Arabs throughout history have oftentimes worked together on these projects. And this is exactly why destruction of the third world, the destruction of Libya under Muammar Gaddafi, brave man, the greatest Muslims that I can think of in the modern era were Bashar al-Assad, the Lion of Damascus, and Muammar Gaddafi, the man with ultimate swag, unlimited swag. And to destroy or at least humiliate those people were likely the number one goals of Israel. And once they were accomplished, they figured, oh man, that felt so good. Time to go get another hit. And so they start destroying and humiliating smaller and smaller populations and countries. And this is exactly why you see Gaza absolutely being wiped off the map, despite the fact that they could have done what they've done over the last 2 years, any time in the last 70 years. They've just waited until now for the specific reason of the psychology of their leaders is grasping towards the dragon of victory. It has nothing to do with anything having to do with Hamas, anything having to do with the defense of war, anything having to do with hostages. I guarantee you it has nothing to do with the hostages. There are many, many deals that have been violated and broken by Israel where Hamas was releasing the hostages. They don't care about the hostages. They will impose starvation blockades on areas where hostages are being held. They will impose carpet bombing on areas where hostages are being held, which is funny enough always consistently been the one thing that prevents you from going all out warfare is taking hostages, which is why the practice of taking hostages was created. But under the Hannibal Directive, it's called, the Israelis had a directive called the Hannibal Directive. It meant killing people before they could become hostages if they were about to be taken or potentially taken to be used as a counterweight against Israeli plans. At this point, it seems like they don't even care about their own people that are being taken, and why would they? I have outlined many, many times that I genuinely do believe that the entire Nazi Holocaust was something encouraged and even funded by high level proto Zionists in order to consolidate a hard Zionist base in the Jewish people in order to create the Israeli state and eliminate people that would have stood with German cultures, Polish cultures, etc., 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 down the line, and scare neutral parties into thinking that Israel is the safest spot, when reality is actually the most dangerous spot. It's the most dangerous spot for a Jew to be. So I'd say I care significantly more about Jewish life than any Zionist that exists on this planet. I can say that with some level of surety. Something absolutely wild that's 100% true is the fact that the far left militant transgender community and the far right anarcho libertarian nationalists are exactly the same with different aesthetics. Sometimes without different aesthetics. But one of the clues to this horseshoe theory is this: both camps wrap back around to anarchy. And when you start talking about anarchy, i.e., doing whatever the group wants to do at any given time without any present morality or preset rule sets, anarcho capitalism and anarcho communism is really close on the Venn diagram. It's really close. They're both sexual degenerates who spend their lives finding ways to manipulate burgeoning systems that still exist without total government control, which actually encourages overbearing government regulation through their actions. One of the reasons why groups like the Black Panthers are a Trojan horse in the black community that's propped up and backed up by the FBI and the CIA. As you know, the CIA was founded with ideology borrowed from the Mossad, and thus all of my theories have very many long-term contingent clues that anybody can deduce if they pay enough attention. And the entire point of this show is to get people to pay attention. It's the entire point of the show. You can have whatever opinion that you want. As long as you have thought about it, as long as you believe in it, I respect it. I respect your opinion. It may not be true. My opinions may not be true, but I respect it if you're trying to adhere to the scientific method and make things a little smarter and a little brighter and a little better and a little bit closer together and a little bit easier to understand. I respect the process. That's for sure. So they both subsist off of the same economy: black market drugs purchased through Bitcoin. Not saying Bitcoin is all bad. I'm just saying that that is the central support beam for the modern, or one would say postmodern, since modernity is in and of itself couched in a post-Renaissance period. Postmodern black market, propped up by the central support beam, not the only support beam, but the central support beam of cryptocurrency in the current market, although previously it was just United States fiat dollars, which only necessarily became that after the fiatification of our currency under Nixon. Everybody loves Nixon. Well, guess what? He was a piece of garbage. And the parts where he wasn't a piece of garbage was manipulated out from under him in order for him to not be able to accomplish anything. So anybody simping for Richard Nixon, get a clue. Get a clue. Seriously. Get it together. But yeah. They both have terrible memories because of this, the drug use. And that allows them to hyperfixate on anything their leaders, who are usually adjacent to feds, as I've said, direct them towards. This plays out frequently in the peripheries because horseshoe theory is real, naturally, and especially because the center is where the diverse conversation takes place. The peripheries equally pride themselves, and especially because the center, equally pride themselves on not being normies like the centrists, but because the conversation is more means tested and counterbalanced between left and right in the center, the peripheries end up being far easier to predict as a group, as is by design. And thus, easier to defeat, easier to control, easier to make crawl back to their camps, and easier to manipulate when they alienate themselves. And ultimately, the seesaw between far left and far right is something that's meant to ratchet both sides down in a race downwards, in a race to hell, where they both see each other's negative strategies. They copy them and try to one-up them on the negativity that they're implementing, even going small bits at a time in some cases. But ultimately what it does is it ratchets us down every single time. Ratchets us down into societal immorality. That's what it's entirely there for. And I can't help but notice just how balkanized the political ideologies of this country are. It's perfectly fine if they're that way. It's not perfectly fine if they're encouraging people's families, friends, and communities to balkanize as well, you see. That's the issue. That's the issue. And essentially, it just alienates them and their friends and their families from each other, community, country. Really cool fan art and memes propagating out of this, that out of a sector, community is essentially how modern, postmodern communities bring each other back together. And it's funny how this works. And it's probably the best way that people come up these days. It's interesting to note. So I don't really get gay guys, you know? You could just hold your own dick in your hand. You don't need somebody else to do that. You don't need to explore a body that's exactly the same as your own. You know what I'm saying? Stupid stuff. Stupid stuff. I also must reiterate, there's very little more disgusting than some Italian stick bug thinking that one more paved paradise is going to bring back the Roman Empire. And for that matter, so-called construction equipment doesn't construct anything outside of maybe cranes. All they do is destroy what has already been constructed by people's hands to recreate a lower quality simulacra cobbled together with plans cast out of wisdom we've forgotten that we didn't invent. Nick Fuentes is such a sorry excuse for a man. He's 27, and still everything he says and does is so predictable. Like he hasn't even gotten over the terrible twos. Everything he does can easily be read before it even happens. Because he does literally nothing outside of reading CNN talking points to a crowd that doesn't watch CNN and doesn't know what the horseshoe theory is and doesn't know what a Trojan horse is. And predominantly whatever serves him in the temporary moment of him demanding attention and help from his friends. But what's funny is that's sometimes not what's best for him in the long term. That's just what's he thinks is best for his dopamine centered, short term, limbic disrupted brain. What are you gonna do? Just note the fact that most of it is fake, and you essentially have, well, let's get into that a little bit, shall we? There are so many creepy Discord niggas who swarm around him pretending to be young and exclusively espousing the Gen X laws of manipulation or whatever and the Am Lion Sar India strength routine we've all seen a million times while pretending to be about 20, 30 years younger than they actually are. It's a very interesting thing to note now that I've got on Twitter and I can see this. I always thought like there was legitimately a bunch of gay young Republicans. I don't think that's the case. I genuinely do believe that most of Nick Fuentes' support is fake and automated, and that's why it swarms into everywhere that he posts at any time of the day, and it doesn't produce anything of value, but what it does is it gunks up the system by which people can actually note that Nick Fuentes is a fed and a creep and a homosexual. And I've been actually preaching against Nick Fuentes for years and years and years. I have gotten into little fights with people over Nick Fuentes at my own church. And I have to note that Nick Fuentes is, in his most capable projection, like a J. Edgar Hoover type sexual degenerate who is collecting data on people. And at his worst, he's just a little child throwing a temper tantrum who was groomed and abused from a young age in Chicago and now does everything he can to try and destroy what he believes is the system that groomed and hurt him. In reality, what he's doing is he's suicide bombing the entirety of young Catholic Republican community. That's what he's doing. He's not only suicide bombing himself, but like Saudi Arabia, he's training young suicide bombers to go in there with the ideology, feeling like they're serving their hero, feeling like there's going to be a reward in thereafter. And it's blowing up all over the place. Because out of all the feds and bots and Indians who are pretending to be 20, 30 years younger than they are, There is some young idiots in America who espouse Catholic ideology, you know, the Vatican flag in the bio sort of guys, XYZ Groiper. There are some of them that are real, and those boys and men can do a lot of damage the way that they're going, the route that they're being trained into. So it has to be noted. It's very important. I've said it's very important for a long time. I think I've even gotten some people to deconvert in real life. No, in real life. It just makes you hate the feds and the USAID even more. And the entire program is likely somewhat automated at this point, with foreign governments realizing that they can scam American youth out of their wealth and potential and thus cripple our country if they're gullible enough to believe that swarm of locusts are their friends. But I don't understand is how Ian Carroll could be stupid enough to fall for it. Like he does no research at all. Really, really. God, man, it's really making me not want to listen to anything he puts out from now on. You want other people to cancel you, bro? You just canceled yourself. Straight up. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that as somebody like, oh, enjoy your downvote, Buster. Better try better. Better try next time. Better try better. Better build back better next time, buddy. No, no, no. Like, you legitimately may have killed like 50% of your actual genuine support network because of the stupidity of simping for the groypers. Everybody, you exposed yourself as a complete idiot who does not actually believe in making a better America. Hate to say it, it is what it is. You know, I'm a big fan of Goa Trans. I've learned that you can predictably read how Israel is actually doing based on the quality and frequency of infected mushroom drops. And it's been trash in recent years. All went downhill when they got that porn star Sasha Grey to make a song with them. All been downhill ever since. And that's Israel as a whole, you know. They actually have they don't have legal gambling, they don't have legal pornography in Israel, but some of the biggest, like Randy Fine from my district, got his start as a gambling executive. Some of the biggest gambling producers and funders, the billionaires that create gambling in America, are literally Israeli, not just Jewish Zionists, but Israeli. And like all of the pornography websites are owned by like legitimate reformed secular rabbis, which is wild to me. And it's wild to me that you can have such thing as a reformed secular priest, but just look at the Novus Ordo Catholic Church. There are reformed secular priests in there. It exists, it just exists in a hypocritical framework, and that hypocritical framework is omnipresent. I'm pretty sure the edgy 2010 Reddit atheist movement was just a refining of anti-Muslim propaganda that will allow people to go, ah, yes, this religion is flawed. While 1.5 billion people are killed by the Pentagon, automated drone swarms with bombs on them, leaving plastic bits all over the place, if you care so much about the environment, far left. And far right, you know, completely ignoring that part of the religion that says thou shalt not kill. Oh yeah, I'll just make this religion that I don't like that much. I'll just let them and fund them kill this other religion because I hate them more. It's gonna come back to bite you. It's gonna come back to bite you. Trust me. It's funny. You actually talk to people that believe in this sort of stuff for whatever reason, and they say, oh no. You know, as Christians, I'm talking about as evangelical Christian Zionists. They go, oh, no, no, no. I don't support Judaism as a world religion, but it actually says in Revelations that you gotta allow the third temple to be built and how the red heifers get sacrificed, and then Satan will come and sit on that throne and bring about the end times. It's just like, so you want to help Satan bring about the end times? And for that matter, you really want to sacrifice every single person in Israel to this conflagrarization to force God's hand? You think that's going to work out for you? You think God is going to reward you for that behavior? It's going to be really, really ironic when people live to see the end of their lives and say, oh, actually, it isn't all about that. I was just tricked and duped by the same things that trick and dupe people throughout all history, throughout all humanity, throughout time, through our fallen state. That has its peaks and valleys, but right now we're in a dark night of the soul. And all the people allowing this have just have allowed an actual apocalypse to happen to 2 million people. living in Gaza that's now spreading into the West Bank. And it's technically, like, if you really want to, like, pay attention, the sort of behavior from Israelis are technically pillaging and raping throughout the world. Lots of English people are being arrested for simply saying that they don't stand with genocide. The American economy is effectively being ruined so that we can afford socialized medicine for Israelis and infinite bombs to go to war with 10 different nations at the same time. You know, we're inching towards war with Russia. That's something that hyper-Zionist Joe Biden was happy to do in order to clear out Syria of Bashar al-Assad so that we would have a flight line into Iran. You know, we're doing all of this at behest of people that hate us and hate their own people. This is a very important thing to recognize, and why I say I love Jews more than any Zionist out there. And it's true. I guarantee you, if you're an end times evangelical or an apocalyptic Zionist and you think, oh, I'm not like those televangelists, I'm not like the Sabbatean Frankists, which I've heard a lot of Jews denounce with my own eyes. I'm more moral and my hatred is born of righteous vengeance and not depravity. You're wrong. The end state of your soul will be the same. Even if you are genuinely less depraved, what you see in them that's deplorable is what you're being baked into with the same unifying field of ideological and moral frameworks. It's that way by design, and you don't want to go down that road. Really don't. Take it from Cousin Tone. Hey, Cousin Tone! People who work with their hands are closer to God and see the light in the words of the just preacher. Those blinded and enveloped by shadow can't expect to see what they see, to have the bravery that they have. In that way, Jesus living among the fishermen was more beneficial for Jesus than the fishermen. Whatever you expect to be saved by some system that isn't the immutable truth of the soul, whatever savior you expect to intervene in the material world and cast out the snakes all by itself, is purely fantastical. There are no saviors in this world. Keywords, this world. The fluid, constantly changing material on its journey from singularity to complete atomization. The stardust we're made out of is not worth any more or any less than any other mote of dust. That is the continuum we are on, with the ant as well as the elephant. That is how we are equal. When you start seeing that, you recognize how powerful the mundane really is. And hopefully you recognize the power of the mundanity of evil. And try to, in every instance of your life, even if it feels boring at first, find the joy and the beauty that God put therein. It just takes proper balance to invoke its material capabilities. And with that, my friends, I hope you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Apologize for the low uploading schedule. Feel like I might be getting back into order, but I do have to plan ahead for computer issues involving the Windows 10 to Windows 11 jump. I have some ideas, so stay tuned. And I will likely be coming to you with a cooking stream sometime in the next 2 weeks, hopefully. Now, what I would really like to do is finish that tier list that I have notes and I have data for on this computer before the computer bricks itself. So, got some projects and working towards them. And thank you for staying tuned. As always, love you guys and gals. Cheers.